Hello Python programmers, this is AK. In this video we are going to see about one of the most popular and important algorithms in machine learning that is named as K-means clustering. K-means clustering is one of the unsupervised learning algorithms in machine learning and it is used to find out the clusters of a data point in the dataset. You all know about the meaning of cluster. A cluster defines that a similar things that are present in a group of data that is called a cluster. If you don't get it, I will give you the real-time examples. Suppose take an example, we are learning Python and we can say ourselves we are a Python cluster. And if we are learning JavaScript, we will say ourselves we are a JavaScript cluster. And the people who are present in the clusters are called data points. Okay. This K-means algorithm is basically find out the common things between the data points and make it as a group. So in this video we are going to cluster one dataset using K-means clustering algorithm. And before starting this video, do like, share, comment and subscribe. These things will motivate me to produce more good contents in Python programming. Okay, so let's start this video. I want to show you the dataset to you before we entering into this project. Once you see this project, you can easily understand what we are going to do and what outputs we can expect from this dataset. Now look at my dataset. In this dataset, I am having 20 columns which represents how many runs are scored in each overs. Actually, this is an unlabeled data. Before explaining the unlabeled data term, I want to explain one thing. All of you know about the 20 over cricket. Generally, there are three sections present in the 20 over match. The first part is power play, second is middle overs, and third one is the death overs. Now you see this data set, we have runs for 20 overs. As a cricket knowing person, you can easily understand this logic. Generally in 20 overs match, in the power play overs, there is a possibility to score big runs. In the middle overs, the run rate will be low compared to power play. And finally in the death overs, they are pushing to score more runs as possible. We are going to group these data points in a 3 cluster formation. At the end of this program, you can easily cluster the power play runs, middle over runs and death over runs, and this may be our expected output. Okay. Now look at this graph. This is the unlabeled data. So I simply plotted the dataset values and we are going to group the power play runs, middle over runs and death over runs. So this is the agenda of this video. Before the coding part, I want to explain this algorithm in a stepwise manner so you can easily relate this algorithm when you are writing the code. For implementing the K-means clustering algorithm, there are some steps you need to know. Step 1 is assign the cluster values. In this step, we have to determine how many clusters we want. The cluster varies upon the dataset you have. Here our dataset is very simple one and you can easily determine the clusters in our dataset. We are going to group the data points in 3 cluster formation. The 3 clusters are power play, middle over and death over. Suppose if you want a 4 cluster formation, then you have to assign the value 4. Remember this step, the cluster value is always depend upon your dataset. Based on your data, you have to change the cluster values. There is one method called elbow method that is used to determine the cluster values. But in this case, we already have the cluster range and we don't need this method here. Okay. And the step 2 is assign the centroid randomly. When you look at my output, you can easily find out the centroid points. Centroid points are mentioned here as a red colored points. You have to arrange the centroid points randomly anywhere on your data points. So this is the second step for the K-means clustering algorithm. And the step 3 is assign the data points to the nearest centroid point. And finally the step 4. In the step 4, we have to calculate the mean value of each cluster. And you need to follow these 2 steps until the centroid doesn't change. Once it is not changed, then we can decide all the data points are arranged in a cluster. These steps are used for once you have large dataset files. Then this iteration process will help you to increase more accuracy to your clusters. But in this case, we have fixed data, so we already know about our dataset values. These are the 4 steps involved in implementing this algorithm. So let's start the coding part. You need to install some libraries like pandas, matplotlib and scikit-learn. These libraries will help you to implementing the K-means clustering algorithms. So open your CMD and type pip install pandas to install the pandas library and do the same thing for matplotlib and scikit-learn installations. Once you install all the dependencies, go to your notebook and import these libraries. Next, you need to read the data set. Create a variable called data, and in this variable you need to type pandas.readcsv, and inside this object you need to pass your dataset file name. When you run this code, you can see the dataset values, and now we are going to plot these data in a separate graph. We are using the scatter plot graphs to plot the data that we have. After plotting the data, you can see the graph which has our data points. So this is our unlabeled data. Using this data, we are going to form 3 clusters, that is power play, middle over and death overs. Now we need to create a data frame. Declare a variable called df, and in this variable you need to type data frame, and in this object you need to pass 2 parameters. The first one is data and second one is the columns. So in the column parameter, we have to pass another 2 values, that is our scores and overs. Okay. So the next one is we are going to divide the data points into 3 clusters. Create a variable called k-means, and in this variable you need to create k-means object and pass the parameter n cluster and give the value as 3. So the data points will divide as a 3 clusters. After that, call the fit object that will implement the cluster values into the current data frame. Okay. Now we are going to place the centroids in a data. Create a variable called centroid, and in this variable you need to type k-means.cluster centers. Mainly this object is used to place the centroid near to the data points, and it is the first iteration. And one more thing that I want to show you, that is where the centroid points are placed in our graph. For that, print the centroid variable. Here you can see that it printed some array values, and it is the actual x and y position of the centroids that are randomly placed to each closest cluster. Okay. And the final step is you need to plot all the things including your centroid points. Why we are plotting the centroid point means you can easily understand how the centroids are arranged and how it forms as a cluster on your data points. That's all about the code, and let's run this program. As we expected, we got the output results. Now you easily understand this data by looking at this graph. That's all about this video. The k-means algorithm is a little bit hard to understand initially. Once you do the practice and research about this, you will understand this algorithm. If you want more algorithm explanations and projects in Python, then subscribe to this channel. You will get more updates regarding Python. And if you like this video, give a like. Thanks for watching, and thank you. See you on next video.